Remember who we are seeing now. At risk of prostate enlargement. We a member or her 20 ebitimi prostate cancer. 5 bitimi afamu nadia ubefamu.
Actually, this is not my fault.
Why? And to wada. Entina midi maniche Executive Prostate Center.
Executive Prostate Center is a unique medical center where we harmonize in-depth traditional medicine with cutting-edge science and technology to cure, to treat, and to prevent diseases like prostate enlargement, prostate cancer.
Executive Prostate Center. Madame home. Facilities no any professional medical care.
Sisi a bibia clear system no. Ye nro ne so de natural. Into we koso afama ye.
Executive Prostate Center. My cured.
Life is a celebration of moments. Big and small.
The sun is scorching, I'm feeling the heat.
With Piva Drink, every moment becomes a refreshing celebration. From the beach to your home, in every corner of your world, Piva Drink adds a burst of refreshment.
Give me Piva cocktail and tangerine.
Celebrate every moment with Piva Drink. Refreshment for every occasion. Piva Drink, a taste you will love.
P for Piva.
This advert is FDA approved.
Imagine a place where technology and compassion meet. A sanctuary of health, precision, and trust. At Olive Health Diagnostics and Imaging, we redefine excellence. From advanced ultrasound, X-ray, and CT scan services to accurate laboratory, cardiology, and dentistry, our mission is clear: to provide the care you deserve with accuracy, precision, and speed. Your trusted healthcare partner, Olive Health Diagnostics, always ready whenever you need us. Olive Health Diagnostics and Imaging, redefining excellence in medical diagnostics.
So tonight my guest is Samuel Abu Jinapor. I have to always be careful because it's confusing. John Abdullahi and Samuel Abu. And then there's also a Professor Jinapor we interviewed recently. Is he the oldest, the prof?
Yeah, he's the oldest.
Okay. So he is an academic purely?
More or less.
So who does he vote for, you or your brother?
You have to ask him.
So you are the third?
I'm the fourth.
Is there another boy?
There's a lady between John and I.
Oh, okay. So but the prof is the boss?
He's the boss.
So even though you may be his minister, he's your big brother?
Absolutely.
No doubt about that. The person I really want to interview is your father, to ask him how he did it. Did you guys grow up in a political family?
No, not at all.
Not at all?
Not at all.
So how did the two of you end up in different parties?
Well, I believe by coincidence. We had very checkered political evolution, from student activism, student politics.
Okay.
And one event after the other meant that I ended up in the NPP and John ended up in the NDC. That's really what it is.
But you went to KNUST?
Yes, I did.
And studied physics?
Yes, that's
So is that when you became political or before that?
Well, I think, even in secondary school, I was politically awake and politically conscious. Okay. Yes, I was in the secondary school at the time of the 2000 elections.
Okay.
And I was very much interested.
Which secondary school is this?
St. Charles Minor Seminary.
Okay.
In Northern Region, in Tamale specifically. And I was very interested. I was very interested in the politics of the time. But I think I became a lot more formed politically in KNUST.
Wow. Your rise in politics has been quite fascinating because for somebody who watched the 2000 elections as a secondary school student, and in 20 years, actually, in 17 years, he became deputy chief of staff because staff deputy. So that's 17 years after secondary school. So you haven't even factored in university. That's a serious rise. And then 22 years later, Minister for Lands.
Yes. So I had the privilege of being named Deputy Chief of Staff at the age of 33.
Wow.
You may be aware. And Minister at the age of 37. So, yes.
And you were the president's spokesperson even when he was a candidate at some point.
That is correct.
That's incredible.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's how many politicians rise this quickly in their political trajectory.
But I'm here. I'm now the other side of the political equation. That's how it goes.
No, but it's not about being in government. It's about, but you're a duty bearer. You're a member of parliament for Damango. And that's very important. You are the ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee and one of the lead voices on the NPP side. One of the most, at least on the NPP side. So even if you're not in government, you are still a serious politician. Yes,
I am, of course. But I'm just saying that, look, my attitude has always been that whatever comes your way, you try and do it well. And my father always advised us that if you were asked to sweep, you should sweep so well that when you're talking about people who sweep, you'll be named. Of course. So whatever you are given to do, you try and do it to the best of your ability. Did you do well or not? Did you excel? You cannot tell. The jury will be out there.
The question I usually ask politicians when they come on this show this year is, my opening question is always the election question. So how did you see the election for somebody who was a key member of the previous government? How shocked were you at the outcome?
The election night of December 7 was a very long night. You go into elections in 2008 was a very difficult election. We couldn't win. In 2012, we did not win. 2016, we won. It's very sweet. The difference between winning and losing is like day and night.
Yeah.
And in 2020, we won. And 2024, we did not win. And so that was a very difficult moment, long night, difficult night, and so on. But really, I think the real issue about 2024 was the unexpected nature of the results. And I must be honest, if anybody had told me before the election that we will come out with that kind of results, I will doubt it completely. But there it is, and as they say, the voice of the people is the voice of God, and the people have spoken and spoken very loudly, and we take it in our strides.
Politicians usually tell us in the media that they know what the people think, but for even you, I'm sure the election result proved to you that there's a lot more to understand about how Ghanaians think.
Well, on the contrary, I think that politicians are rather in the worst position to tell what the people think. I mean, of course, as a serious political operator and political party, you definitely must have tools which will reasonably and objectively tell you what is happening in the political market or in the political space, and tools like research, opinion polls, and so on. But all of those also sometimes fail you. But as an individual and as a political grouping, I believe that people will tell persons or individuals or groups who are not political the honest truth than they would tell you who is in a position of authority or who is a political being. You know, in my own constituency, for example, there are 2 or 3 people I normally will go to and get a sounding from them. If you have a good pastor who has a wide reach, the congregants of that pastor will most likely confide in him more than they will confide in you, the member of parliament. So that may be a good source. But I still have to conclude by saying that there are time-tested tools which are available to politicians and political parties to be able to determine the mood of a country or a constituency. They also do fail. But you are right. People normally will come and speak to you more honestly than they will come and speak to me. They will tell me what probably I want to hear.
I'll come back to NPP, but I just wanted to start off on this note. President Mahama has been in office for 93, 94 days now. Is that enough time to assess a candidate based on your experience? Or is it a 120 days, or is it first year? What is an objective time to say this person is doing this or that as a president?
93 days, 120 days, even 6 months will not be enough time to conclusively assess a president. I think the pundits have more or less come to the conclusion that midterm is somehow a real time to be able to pass a largely conclusive judgment or determination as to how the government is doing, which is why, for example, in America, the midterm elections tends to be very consequential. And also, a lot of the experts will say to you that political parties lose elections by midterm. And the country is either taking you in or the country is writing you off. But the very beginning of a government, the composition of the government itself, the appointment of key officers of the government, the reading of the first budget, the various initial interventions or decisions or policies which are announced or rolled out, can give you a sense of the trajectory of the government and the momentum, whether or not the momentum is with them or whether or not they are headed in a direction where they will end up well. It can give you snipers of it. But I'm not too sure that 93 days is enough time to say this government is doing well or this government is not doing well, or this government is headed for failure or this government is headed for sources.
And I think we saw a report Musa Dankwa did where the president's approval ratings were pretty high. People felt that the country was moving in the right direction. And of course, this is 2 months into an administration. So that is to be expected. The question though is it more what happens within the politics of parliament that determines the public view, or it's more substantive?
Well, I think the reference of Musa Dankwa's report is good. But you also know that the research he did in February and the research he just released, the approval rating is dropped by some 12 percentage points or so. In February it was 70% plus. Now I think it's 60% plus. 60% plus is still a high enough approval rating if this report is what we are going by. But I think it's important to point out that there is a dip in the approval rating, as is expected, and as it will continue to dip normally. That means it's normal. Once you govern and take decisions, you will have people who will not be particularly excited about some of the decisions taken. For example, the jack-up of electricity at Harris, for example, is not one that I believe a lot of Ghanaians will particularly be happy about. So you will have a series of events which will bring down your approval ratings. But that said, my view is Parliament alone is not enough. I think Parliament is crucial. Parliament is absolutely important when it comes to the politics of our country and shaping public opinion, because as you know, Parliament is essentially a microcosm of the country. You have every constituency represented there. And that obviously is a melting pot of the politics of our country. There are other factors, so many other factors. The media, for example, civil society, the generality of the people, the political issues, the big political issues of the time, and what positions governments take and opposition take, and all of that do affect public opinion. And as it is today, early days yet, but I think we can decipher snipers of what seems to be happening and what probably we can forecast.
There's a view that NPP in opposition has started too early in terms of raising many issues. And this is a view. It's not my view necessarily, but there's a view that the leader of the minority is trying too hard. So for every major policy, even when the appointees were not coming, he was like, they are delaying, they should appoint. Then he says, appoint from this region. Then he now talks about different levels of appointments. It's almost like the NPP is struggling to find something to criticize the government in their so-called honeymoon stage. You are in parliament. Do you get that sense that you need to probably pace yourself better, observe better what Mahama is trying to do before you can offer substantive opposition?
I will look at it a bit differently. Bernard, we need to ask ourselves, what is the role of the opposition in a democracy such as ours? The role of the opposition, essentially, first, is to keep the government accountable. I think it's absolutely important, which is why it is said that you cannot have a proper functioning democracy if there is a non-existent opposition, which is why our constitution expressly outlaws a one-party state. And that is a reaction to our history, where we had a one-party state, which is the framers of our constitution felt that to have a one-party state will mean we do not have a true and functioning democracy. And so that is the first role of an opposition party. The second, and keeping the government accountable is not the sole preserve or responsibility of the opposition. It is also the responsibility of people like yourself,
course, media,
civil society, and the rest. And so that is the role of opposition. The second is the opposition is required to offer constructive criticism. And I use the word constructive with emphasis, constructive criticism. And thirdly, the opposition is required to put itself in a position where it becomes a viable government in waiting. So these are the three cardinal pillars of any opposition worth its salt. And so if you are in parliament and a matter is brought to the floor of parliament, a policy of the government is brought to the floor of parliament, or there's an issue in the country which is topical and which is relevant, and the opposition raises issues about it, in so doing, to satisfy these three cardinal requirements or responsibilities of an opposition which is worth its salt, a worthy opposition. I'm not too sure whether that can be said to be trying too hard or being desperate or being eager or not giving the government time. Of course, there's always the issue of style and how people present their issues and how they approach issues when they come up. But fundamentally, once the outreach of the opposition satisfies these three cardinal ingredients of an opposition party, of one, holding the government accountable, of two, offering constructive criticism, which in some cases the government may even find useful, and three, positioning itself through propositions of viable alternatives to policy and the rest as a worthy, credible, viable government in waiting. The opposition is doing its work.
Personally, on yourself, I've heard you comment on a number of things. I think one of the main things you did was to talk about the appointees. Because the president has said he would run the country with 60 ministers. He has 56. And then I think you had said that there are other people who have been appointed who are not non-ministers. The Minister for Government Communication came to deny that. I'm not sure where that issue is, because he said Mahama had appointed only 30 presidential staffers. I think at the time, you said 100, if I'm not mistaken. Did you provide evidence of the 100?
Well, first of all, it is important for me to set out what I sought to do on the floor of Parliament. What I sought to do was to say that this age-old discourse or debate in Ghana, in our country, about size of government, and always remember that this debate of the size of government did not begin under President Akufo-Addo. I recall very vividly under President Kufuor and several other governments, the issue as to what should be the true size of the Ghanaian government has always been a big issue. And the comparison is always made as to the size of Ghana, the population of Ghana, and the population of Britain, for example, and the number of ministers they have, and the number of ministers we have here. So what I said was, if you want to appreciate the size of a government, and when people talk about the size of government, they essentially are talking about cost-saving measures. They are talking about a lean, efficient government which does not cost the taxpayer in a manner which is unbearable or which is unreasonable. That is essentially the quarrel. You have a government which is too big. They are running a government machinery with land cruisers, with salaries, with that. It's an unnecessary burden on the national exchequer.
Okay.
So I said, you will not appreciate the size of a government when you look at the number of ministers simpliciter. And that is the truth. Because you have other appointments, which other appointments enjoy conditions of service and privileges which are coterminous to what ministers enjoy. And I gave the example of, say, a senior presidential advisor whose pegging or ranking is the same as an MP cabinet minister. And so if you are talking about an MP cabinet minister as it relates to the cost on the national exchequer, a senior presidential advisor is just the same as, the only difference is the title. The only difference is the name. But otherwise, its incidents or incidences on the national exchequer are the same. You know, and that's the point I sought to make. So when you go to a place like United Kingdom, we normally talk about the size of the UK government only in terms of Secretary of State. Yeah. But you know, Bernard, that in the United Kingdom, you have Secretary of State, you have Ministers of State, you have parliamentary private secretaries who are essentially deputy ministers. And when you put it all together, the size of the UK government is not what is normally presented to us. And so
Be that as it may, did you say that the president had appointed over 100 staffers at the presidency?
No, I did not.
You did not say that?
I said if you add the number of staffers, senior presidential advisors, and the rest, and you add them to
the ministers,
you'll be inching to 100.
And that was what you said?
Yeah, that's the point I was making.
So if you add the 30 or so that we have seen to the 56, plus a couple others, I think maybe it was misunderstood because the minister's reaction was that there are only 27 as of the time he was reacting on March 7, and that he didn't know where he got the 100 from.
No, but when you add 27 to 56, as you say,
yes,
you are talking about
you're
talking about 83 ministers. You know, and indeed,
it's not just 83 ministers, 83 appointees.
So 83 appointees who draw the same salary and what have you. But
the man promised he would do below 60.
No, I don't. And he did 60. And then you have presidential staffers for the 16 regions and all of that. No, you see, but the point I'm making is this.
Yeah.
President Mohammed's appointment of 56 ministers is to be welcomed. There's no two ways about that. It's a good step.
It's commendable.
It's commendable. There's absolutely no two ways about that. Provided always that the 56 ministers are able to deliver.
Correct.
Because it is not just about the number of ministers or the size of the government.
Okay.
The national constitution is very clear that the president, the constitution is framed in this term that the president shall appoint as many ministers as are necessary for the running of the country. So if you have 56 ministers and they deliver, which is lean but effective.
Yeah.
That is highly commendable. There's absolutely no two ways about that. But I also think it's important that in the discourse, in terms of enriching the discourse, we enlighten the discussion to let people know that it's not just the number of ministers.
It's good you've clarified
but all of it.
This is the point of view. My guest is the MP for Damongo, is Samuel Jinapor. When we come back, we'll talk about Galamsey. It's a big issue because he was Minister for Lands. And that was in the second Akufo-Addo term. There was a major national outcry for a clampdown on Galamsey when he was minister. Now that he is in opposition, how does he assess this government's fight against the canker? Stay with us.
Do you want a healthy smile?
Searching for a family-friendly dental practice? Hi, I'm Tanya from Bethel Dental Clinic, Ghana. People do not always want to go see the dentist because that visit is oftentimes associated with noise, pain, and a hard, cold environment. To encourage everyone in the family to look forward to a dental visit, I will advise you that you put some thought in selecting a family-friendly dental practice. It should have a warm, welcoming atmosphere for both adults and children. A comfortable reception with good, comfortable chairs, nice music, some good beverages and cold water, good TV programs, toys, books, and even a game console for the children. Because your family smile matters, please make time in selecting your dental clinic so that everyone in your home will be happy to see the dentist.
You want to get polytan?
Oh, and then you're fine.
Go straight.
No, I want to left, right.
And you grab right.
Ghana na ye wono. Se woni dwom a e na ye data. Who knows? Abe na ye me pe politan ka to. Enu tin na me nua ba otu ko bia me na ba hayo. O fu ko bia e de entwa ye kura.
Akuya bulambo kotoman. Emu ha.
Like they took my eyes. Came to me go to the distributor and you give the original Polytank. You hear the sound?
Polytank. Papananka Sankasa.
Hi, my name is Ochiame Kwame. I live at the plush Leisure Den Symphonic, a real estate property developed by Whaley Properties, the very developers of Vista Del Mare and the beautiful Alphabet City. So come with me to site. Let me introduce you to your new home, a gated community with 24-hour security in the heart of Sakomono. Behind me is going to be Willow Lane, where elegance will meet tranquility. You are going to be greeted with a 4-bedroom ensuite home with an elevator, swimming pool, children's playground, constant electricity, and many more. But wait, it gets even more interesting for early birds like you. You get a whopping $50,000 discount. Yes, I said $50,000 if you purchase between now and the end of this month. So call us now or visit us. Willow Lane, where elegance meets tranquility.
Welcome back. We're still here with Samuel Abu Jinapor. And I don't know if you noticed that I interviewed Samuel on Monday. I'm interviewing you today. And I probably have to do a couple more Samuels this week. You know, I was just doing off the finger. Samuel Jinapor, Samuel Nate George, Samuel Ablakwa, Samuel Jemfi, Samuel Auku. And then Samuel Atachia. Do you know why you were named Samuel? Did your mother explain to you why he called you that?
I'm not too sure.
But isn't that an interesting coincidence?
Maybe.
I don't see any, apart from John. The John name is a presidential name, right? So John Kufuor, John Rawlings, John Mills, John Mahama. But I don't know about, maybe the Samuels will be the next. And your brother is John as well.
Maybe the Bernards, you never know.
I don't want to go there. Because there are a few Bernards, I'm not sure.
Maybe the Bernards.
Interesting, I see. But are these guys your friends? The names I mentioned? Samir,
each one of them.
Because Ablakwa occupied the role.
I did.
Yes,
so I am. Yes. I'm occupying now.
So he was the
ranking foreign affairs.
Yeah. So did you compare notes?
We're very good friends.
Does he live handing over notes for the ranking position?
Yes, he gave me a few pep talks. But we are very good friends.
But now he's the minister.
Yes.
In the first term of your parliament, what committees were you on before this one?
I was on the employment and social welfare.
Okay.
Yeah, I was on employment and social welfare.
Okay.
And indeed, the minister was very gracious and kind to invite me to his office since he took over.
Okay.
And we had a very good.
But now you are on foreign affairs as the ranking and also on the privileges and immunities.
Indeed.
Critical. So the foreign affairs and regional integration, that means you have a diplomatic role in a way.
That is correct.
So ECOWAS Parliament, possibly traveling to UN
no,
if it's
not
necessary.
ECOWAS Parliament, ECOWAS Summit,
ECOWAS
UN,
Summit.
and all of that, yes.
Wow. So, wow, that's interesting. Who is the chairman of that committee?
Dr. Okovan-Dapoe.
Oh, okay.
Is he a doctor or Mr. Okovan-Dapoe?
Yes, the former mayor of Accra.
Former mayor of Accra. Fine gentleman.
So
we are getting on very well.
It's going to be interesting. So, and that committee's job is to provide guidance on foreign matters.
Yeah, it's to shadow the foreign minister when it comes to foreign relations, really. So it's a committee that has oversight over the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Is the foreign minister your friend?
No, he's my friend. I've known him from student politics days and the rest.
Were you surprised at his appointment?
Not at all.
Because of the path?
Not at all. I mean, he was ranking for foreign affairs and he was, quite active in his party. I'm not too sure, and I've told him this. I thought, given some of the controversies he was involved in and the nature of his advocacy, maybe that doesn't cut out well for the position of foreign minister,
Yeah.
vis-a-vis the need for diplomacy and all of that. But at the vet, I asked him a question or two, and I think he explained himself quite well.
Is the work of MP a good preparation for minister?
I'm not too sure.
Or let me reframe it. How important is the MP work? Because if you look at Mohammed's appointees, a lot of them were ranking members on the. So Samuel George was ranking for communication, Ablaka was ranking, Cassiel was ranking on finance. There seems to be some. In fact, Akando was ranking for health. So it seems as if he perceives that if you do ranking work in Parliament, you have an understanding of the ministry. That's the. In fact, even Clement Apak.
Yeah.
I think it was the deputy ranking for education. Is not deputy.
Yeah.
So you can see that Kwame Agboja.
Yes, ranking for roads.
And his roads. So it seems to be Mohammed's view. And my question to you, how does
John Jinapor ranking for energy?
So clearly we've established a pattern. So is the work of because you've been minister and you are also MP. Are the works? Is there a learning you learn as a ranking that helps you as a minister?
I think so, because as ranking, you have your teeth into the issues, and you get the opportunity to be involved in the discussions and the issues relating to the ministry. Because as you know, whatever the ministry does, the ministry will have to end up in Parliament. And when the ministry ends up in Parliament, the real work in terms of the grilling, the scrutiny, happens at the committee level. So if you are ranking for a particular committee, and indeed you are ranking fit for purpose, by the time you are done with your ranking role, by and large,
you will know what government is doing.
You will know the issues.
The details
involved.
will be
exactly
at your fingertips.
And even whilst you are doing it, I'm sure you yourself, you will be in a position where you will say, look, this matter that the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources brought to the Lands and Natural Resources Committee, I would have done it this way and that way. I'll do it differently. And you can begin to develop policy alternatives as ranking. So there is absolutely nothing wrong. I think it's a good practice if the ranking does his work well and he gets a grasp of the issues relating to the particular committee and, for that matter, that ministry. The president may just as well have him transition straight away from the ranking position to minister. That is the case in the United Kingdom, you may be aware. In UK, the shadow cabinet almost invariably
become the new ministers. It's already known.
Automatic.
Yeah, which means that our framers were not that bad when they said the president must take at least 50% of his ministers from Parliament, because some have criticized that. But to the extent that the work of Parliament is a good preparation for minister job, maybe the framers knew something. Because right now, a lot of people are saying that, oh, why do you have to restrict yourself to Parliament? There is too much. Let's go outside Parliament. I'm sure I've heard that argument before, in terms of appointing ministers.
Yes, I've heard it, but it's also important for us to situate it in the context of the historical antecedents.
Okay.
As you know, we've practiced all sorts. Under Prime Minister Liman, we practiced the strict measure, which meant that the Westminster system, parliamentary system. So you cannot be a minister if you are not a member of Parliament, which is the Westminster system as it pertains in the United Kingdom today. Prime Minister Buzia, we did
Same thing, yes.
And then under President Liman, we practiced the strict separation of powers, which meant that you could not be a minister if you were a member of Parliament.
So Buzia was the parliamentary extreme.
Yes, the Westminster.
Liman was the
presidential extreme. And of course, the Liman one is the American system, where you cannot be a Secretary of State or you cannot be a minister
and still be in Congress.
And still be in Congress. You have to resign your position as a congressman. And so they are extreme forms. I say what we have is a Ghanaian
hybrid.
The Ghanaian hybrid. The Ghanaian model. Our model is that we are giving ourselves flexibility. The president can look across the spectrum, and if he finds somebody who is not in Parliament, but who can help him govern, as President Akufo-Addo had Honorable Alan Chirmanting, Professor Frimpong Boateng, Kandapa, so many people. In fact, Honorable Shirley Ayoko Botchwey in her second term as foreign minister was not a member of Parliament. And I can go on and on and on. Several ministers in his cabinet who were not members of Parliament. As President Mahama has Dr. Manibu Ama, the Minister for Works and Housing, and a few others. You know, so I think the whole idea is that the president's hands should not be tied unnecessarily, especially so that we have tested these two extreme systems, the extreme systems of having a strict Westminster system and having a strict separation of power, which is the Congress American system, and yet none of them survived. So look, we can continue to have these debates and have a national discourse on these matters. But I want to believe that there is a good reason why the framers of our national constitution gave the president this flexibility.
We said that 90 days, or 93 days may not be that long. Is Galamsey, though, an issue that we can use to begin to assess how President Mahama's approach to governance will be?
To some extent, because 2 or 3 matters. First, I think the new minister who is in office, Minister Amaboa, has just been there for 2 or 3 months, and I believe he should be given some time to settle in and roll out his policies, and let's see what comes out of them. Secondly, I'm normally reluctant to criticize my successor. I think it's not elegant and edifying. For now, eventually, if the matters become controversial, we will delve into them. Thirdly, there are 2 or 3 things the government has to pay attention to. One, there is obviously a clear case or situation of political actors, and in some cases, political actors at the high level allegedly involved in this issue of illegal small-scale mining. And the whole thinking is that our government is now in office, and it's our turn to get on with it. It's our turn to take our share of the illegal mining, Galamsey turf, to cut our turf out of the illegal mining Galamsey space. I mean, yesterday or two, a journalist put out a report which suggested, I think it was Erastus or so, which suggested that the Galamsey situation is actually worsened. And I think you don't need to be a rocket scientist or you don't need to be a researcher to know. I mean, from the circumstantial and anecdotal evidence available to us, clearly the situation is worsened. And it's worsened, as I say, primarily because of this thinking by political party actors that this is our time, so we are allowed to, nobody can stop us. That's number one. Number two, I think there is also the issue of impunity, and impunity is creeped in. And the moment you have cracks impunity, the situation becomes very dire. And so government must begin to look at that critically and look at how to exercise the culture of impunity when it comes to the fight against illegal mining. And thirdly, and I may say more importantly, is that some of the firm, clear, manifesto, public commitments the government made when it comes to illegal small-scale mining, I think it's important that they live up to them. There are some of them I took a different position when I was minister. My position has not changed, and I don't intend to change my position unless superior evidence or argument is put before me. For example, the government, when they were in opposition, made a clear commitment, a categorical commitment to the Ghanaian people that if they were voted into office, they would declare a state of emergency in mining constituencies or mining districts of our country. That was a big issue in the run-up to the election. I think this issue came up forcefully sometime in September, October, November, and I was in the middle of it. The TUC called for a state of emergency, the Ghana Medical Association called for a state of emergency, the Catholic Bishops' Conference called for a state of emergency, the charismatic churches called for a state of emergency. Several
the media coalition.
Yeah, the media coalition. Several major stakeholders in our country called for a state of emergency. The government at the time, which I was the minister responsible for mining, took a particular view. The opposition at the time supported
civil
the call.
society. They supported civil society's call.
They supported civil society's call and actually went a step further to commit and promise that when voted into office, the 120-day social contract to the Ghanaian people, they would declare a state of emergency in mining districts of our country. So that kind of thing, if you don't declare it, and as we speak, 93 days, we have a few more days to go. If that is not done, especially within the context of the menace having exacerbated, having worsened, then there's a question of whether or not the commitment.
So it's consistency and credibility.
I think it's important.
Fair point.
Yeah,
but
I think it's important.
Should we also not say, and I 100% agree with you, that they ought to do this. But your position, when I interviewed you on radio, I think this was around October, you said to me that state of emergency was too draconian.
I haven't changed my position.
So I just want to. So if you haven't changed that view,
I haven't changed.
Then that view should continue.
No, I stick to that view.
But if you still stick to that view, why are you saying that this government should then implement?
No, I have not asked them to do so. I'm saying that they should respond.
They should do what they said they would do.
Not even that, but they should respond to their commitment.
Okay.
Yeah, we should hear from them. They should come out.
I think that's fair.
They should come out to say we will impose a state of emergency at such and such time and in such and such form. Or we will not impose a state of emergency because of ABC reasons.
Okay.
But not to say anything and to leave it hanging, I think is not a proper way of proceeding.
But if I ask you as a former Minister of Lands, whether you think they should whether a state of emergency should be declared in mining areas based on everything you know, would you say yes or no?
Well, what I would say to you is that the situation is worsening now. The situation is worsening. I think 2 weeks ago, some people got killed in Galamsey pits. The extent to which our forest reserves are being destroyed, the rate of the destruction is almost double. In some cases, I'm told it's quadrupled. When I was minister at the time, we were successful at cordoning a good number of Ghana's forest reserves. Today, the reports are that almost all the forest reserves of our country have been invaded almost completely. And as I say, 2 days ago, there were footages of illegal miners taking over large tracts of our forest reserves. Water bodies are being polluted at an alarming rate in a manner that we probably have never seen before in Ghana. When you put all of this together, I think not a state of emergency blanket, a blanket state of emergency, but a certain legal framework which will be under the general umbrella or general rubric of a state of emergency, but which is nuanced in a manner that will not unnecessarily disturb or infringe on the fundamental human rights of the citizens or residents of these catchment areas.
I see.
May suffice. Because why I said it was draconian, why we were concerned in declaring a state of emergency, was its potential of affecting people who had nothing to do with illegal small-scale mining, ordinary innocent citizens who are not connected to illegal small-scale mining. So you can couch it and structure it and have the contours in a manner that...
So it must be a nuanced
It must be a nuanced state of emergency.
Two things to say. The minister has said to us that about 7 forest reserves have been reclaimed. He showed that on a slide he showed the media a few days ago. Also, he says that a ban, state of emergency, and other options are on the table. This was on April the 4th when he was pressed by the media about excavator banning and all that. He said all those options are still available. So I'm not really sure, as you said, because it's your successor, you don't want to criticize him too much. He's saying all the right things, but a lot of people are frustrated that actions are not following. For example, the LI 2462, for some reason, the government didn't repeal it. They have just decided to remove the president's power to sort of veto whatever the minister does. How do you make of that? Because that LI was passed under you.
Yes, indeed.
And you were criticized for that LI.
Yeah, but no. Bernard, to begin with, the reclaimed lands, just for the records, the reclaimed lands were done under my watch, under the previous administration's watch. I mean, you can't reclaim lands.
He said he's reclaimed 7 forests.
No,
he even mentioned
you can't reclaim 2.
I'm just quoting him.
No, but you can't reclaim. You can't.
He said 7.
Hold on.
He's changed them from red. He's changed them from orange to green or something.
I know what he's talking about. You can't reclaim forest lands in 2-3 months. It's not done. It takes quite a number of time.
Or maybe he has sacked the people from the place.
It takes a period of time.
Maybe that's what he means.
So we had a reclamation program, which was intended to reclaim a good number of forest reserves, which had been degraded. And indeed, at the time we were leaving office, literally all of them were either complete or done or almost done. I didn't have the opportunity to commission a good number of them because of the election period. But they had been reclaimed and revegetated. I mean, there's no two ways about it. But that he's commissioned them or completed those which were not completed, all of those is welcomed. All of those is good. The matter to do with the LI, you recall that the Akufo-Addo government through our engagement with organized labor, took a decision, and it was a cabinet decision, that the LI be repealed. And indeed, the Attorney General, Godfrey Dame, took steps to repeal the LI. It wasn't done because at the time, you recall this
Parliament
issue of,
could not, minority majority.
Exactly. So that position had been taken by the Akufo-Addo government before we left office. Now, what the current government committed to do was to repeal it. And indeed, they ended up amending just a few portions of the LI. Now,
when they came to Parliament with that proposed amendment, I heard you. Did you call for them to repeal it? Because when they came back to Parliament, that debate, you were given a chance to speak as a former sector minister.
Yes.
I don't recall you saying that they should repeal it.
Yeah, what I said was that, so first of all, the amendment they have done does not cure the mischief which I believe the country once cured and which the government committed to cure. And what was the mischief? Or what was the problem? The problem was that we want a regime where mining will not take place in forest reserves.
All right.
That is what is the objective.
Of course.
That's what is the goal. That is what is being called for. That we should have a legal regime where mining does not take place in forest reserves. And I made a point on the floor of Parliament that what the government was doing will not prevent mining in forest reserves. And I actually went as far as referencing the National Constitution, which vests all mineral resources.
Even though you are the one who brought that law. The law at least your
if
government.
You say my government.
Your government brought this law that has created this problem.
Not me,
now you're saying that the way they are. So it's a strange situation.
No, it's not. Not me as the minister. Not me.
Why did your government even come up with that law?
Well, the environment minister at the time will tell you or attempt to explain why that law was brought. But I don't think that should
it's an important point.
Well, if you want to tell you what was put on the floor of Parliament, the memorandum that was brought to accompany this LI was to say that in the past, the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources had power to grant mining rights in any part of Ghana and in any part of a forest reserve.
Okay.
So this law said certain areas have been designated. They talked about mangroves, they talked about sacred sites, they talked about biodiversity enclaves. And if you wanted to grant a mining right for mining to take place in these areas, you require the permission of the president, the authorization of the president. Fast forward, a consensus had emerged across the country that we do not need this law.
Okay.
And when the government came to the floor of Parliament to amend this LI, the point I made was that the combined effect of the provisions of the National Constitution and the Minerals and Mining Act 206, Act 703, operated to create the situation where even with this amendment, the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources had the right and had the legal mandate to grant licenses for mining to take place in forest reserves. And if it is indeed and in fact our intention of proscribing mining in forest reserves, then the amendment will not suffice. That's the point I made.
Fair enough. Let me do two quick mining issues before we go for next issue. Gold Fields, that mine, the 30-year lease has run out or runs out on the 18th. Government says we are not going to renew it, and we believe it's part of owning our natural resources. As a former sector minister, is this a good decision?
Well, I had a lot of dealings and engagement with Gold Fields, and I'm very familiar with the work of Gold Fields and the intricacies of their work. I had the occasion to have several discussions with the global CEO of Gold Fields, as it relates to some Ghanaian contractors and Ghanaian local companies and entities who had relationships with Gold Fields. And the attempt was to try and find accommodation between these Ghanaian local contractors and goldfields to bring about harmony in the operations of goldfields. Of course, goldfields' application did not end up on my desk. You know. I mean, let me put it this way. I don't know if it ended up on my desk. Nobody approached me about a goldfields application.
For an extension? For
an extension. But quite clearly, this is the time that Goldfields has made an application for an extension. I support fully any attempt to indigenize and domesticate and Ghanaianize, if I can use that word, the natural resources of our country. I will support that wholeheartedly. We don't have enough time for me to tell you the extent to which we went as a government to indigenize the mining sector of our country. We did a whole lot to ensure that Ghanaians participated in the value chain. In principle, I don't have a problem with that.
What about the form? Should it be public or private?
Both. Should be both.
It could be both.
Yeah, it should be a mix.
All right.
It should be a mix with the aim of ultimately having a greater private sector participation and a greater private sector ownership.
Wonderful.
Especially as it is private sector conglomerates, not just individual private sector. I mean, for example, not companies which is owned 100% by one person, but partnerships.
I see.
Partnerships of Ghanaian private sector. And also our pension funds and so many other funds. And
can invest
in
in
it. But I need to sound a caution, final caution on this. We also, in so doing, ought to be careful not to be engaging in constructive expropriation.
Okay.
That's absolutely important because the mining sector thrives on security of investment.
But and that is what lease is over, so that one is not a problem. I mean, the lease is over, so for that one they can't say that.
Well, but they are always.
If you were giving the thing for 30 years,
no problem.
It's over. So there's no case
but
of that.
There are always these stability clauses, and also the investment they put in with the.
But it was a 30-year horizon.
With the hope that when it expires, based on the facts and based on the evidence, an extension will be done. So that can have an effect on investment in the industry. But I need to say this and say so forcefully. Any effort at indigenizing the mining sector of our country and any effort at ensuring that Ghanaians occupy the commanding height of the mining sector of our country, I fully support it.
We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll try and wrap up with a few more points. This is the point of view. My guest is the MP for Damongo and former Minister for Land. Stay with us.
Fire pomudi ni agobio Ghana fueni age efri say ya your local spices na ya frafra dia ya sankofa natural spice
me de gumi jollof mu ni mi sti wa hodoma e ma ne dance
Stanley the barbecue the go on
sankofa natural spices and one you use 100% natural.
Adofo mamunye huge mistake sankofa natural spices
FDA ejedi nkratu yatu.
Remember we are seeing now. At risk of prostate enlargement. We remember oha 20 ebitimi prostate cancer. 5 bitimi afamu na dia obefemu.
Actually, this is not my fault.
And to wada entina medi mani Executive Prostate Center.
Executive Prostate Center is a unique medical center where we harmonize in-depth traditional medicine with cutting-edge science and technology to cure, to treat, and to prevent diseases like prostate enlargement, prostate cancer.
Executive Prostate Center, Madame facilities no any professional medical care.
Sisi a bibia clear system no ye nro ne so de natural into we koso afama ye.
Executive Prostate Center, my cured.
Excellent. Be that business owner that stands out and is very productive.
You're so confident. How do you do it?
It starts with Built. Where does your confidence come from? Paperwork made simple. Built takes all the hustle away. Yeah, don't be like her. Built is your all-in-one simplified finance platform. It's your home for invoices, payments, your payroll, and so much more.
Oh, wow.
Grow your business today. Sign up now at Built.Africa. Download the Built app now.
Welcome back. We're still on a point of view. My guest is Samuel Abu Jinapor. We're discussing many things, mining key points. Before we come to conclude, so two things happened. This week, the Gold Board issued a statement and basically said that all small-scale licenses for assaying, selling, buying and exporting of small-scale of gold has essentially will elapse at the end of the month, and now the Gold Board will be there. And I think the basis for the setting of the Gold Board, from my understanding, is that there's a big gap between the gold produced here and the value we get. So there seems to be a lot of smuggling, and they want some sort of quasi-regulator of the pool in the chain so that the money will stay here. That's my understanding of what they've said. I mean, your parliament agreed to pass the Gold Board bill. I think it was...
the minority walked out, actually.
But you contributed to the process
the
at
debate
a point.
And
yes, and some amendments. Yeah. So, is the Gold Board a good thing?
Look, Bernard, the Gold Board obviously is a build-up of the Bank of Ghana's domestic gold purchase program, which was introduced. Yeah, it is, which was introduced by the previous administration, and which culminated in gold for oil and so many other things, which we sought to leverage our gold resources for national development. The Gold Board, in principle, should not be a bad thing. In principle, which is that you are setting up a body that will more or less take control of the gold resources of our country, leverage it for the good of our country.
Yeah.
In principle, nobody should quarrel with that.
Yeah.
But I am sounding a word of caution that the implementation, if not done properly, can be a huge scandal in waiting. And if you want to understand why I sound this caution, the Gold Board is very much mimicking Cocoa Board. You know, instead of Gold Board is taking gold, the product Gold Board is leveraging is gold. Cocoa Board is leveraging cocoa, and Cocoa Board is the only body that is mandated to, you know, buy cocoa, export cocoa, deal in cocoa, and that's the same thing the Gold Board is going to do. But pay attention to how we've run Cocoa Board in our country and the problems we've had with Cocoa Board. And always remember that if we don't implement this Gold Board effort properly, the problems will be 10 times more than Cocoa Board. It's a caution, and we need to be, and gold is not cocoa. Cocoa is in a sack. You can put $5 million of gold on your body, and you'll be able to walk across.
Yeah.
So black market, smuggling, the amounts of money that are advanced for the purchase of this gold, integrity, value for money, proprietary, and all of that are matters that I believe the finance minister should keep a close eye on.
Fair enough.
And if that was done and is implemented well, why not?
Let me come back to
help our
NPP.
country.
Almost every day there's a headline about the party. Somebody in the party says something. Just this week, I've heard Owusu Bempa, many NPP members didn't vote in 2024 due to wrong candidate choice. Then we heard Dennis Miracles Abuaji Baumia is the most experienced NPP person, some sort of thing. Is it good or bad the way, I mean, from a media point of view, you're enjoying it, people are talking, people are trying to resolve. But as a politician, key member of the NPP, hearing daily commentary around who lost the election, who should lead the party, who is to blame, is it healthy?
Well, it's not healthy, but it's also somehow, to a large extent, unavoidable. When you lose elections of this nature, and you lose elections at such magnitude, you definitely have people, it will create some initial temporary problems of people wanting to vent or wanting to express their views and so on and so forth. But more importantly is the fact that this is the time for sober reflection. I think all of us must understand that this is the time for sober reflection. This is the time for introspection. And this is the time for utmost discipline in the party. And party members, myself inclusive, must discipline ourselves and ensure that we, at every point in time, whatever we say or do, inures to uplifting the image of the NPP.
Do you believe in the idea of some research by some committee
That is being done, Professor.
Yeah, because some people feel like, I've heard people like Adjua say that, why is Michael Quay the one leading the process? And why are the current executives the ones been doing that in terms of initiating the process? I don't know what you think. Is that the best way to go? To wait for a committee to finish its work and then objectively analyze what went wrong? Or...
Well, you can't take away the fact that Professor Michael Quay is a very senior member of our country, and I should say he's a senior statesman in Ghana, having served as Speaker of Parliament, and so one will expect that all things being equal, he will do a credible job, and we all have confidence that that is what will happen. And of course, the quality of his report is what will justify the quality of the work they've done. I don't have any reason to doubt that the Okoye committee will come up with. I think they'll come up with a good report which will guide the party, which will help the party in our reorganization efforts moving forward.
In Team Fojo case, you wrote to the diplomatic community. What was your point there?
No, well, I think the matter, when it came up, the minority caucus's position was that we should contact the diplomatic community, and obviously it has to be through me as a ranking member, to furnish the Ghanaian state authorities or security apparatus whatever intelligence they have, and that's exactly what we did.
So where is the matter now? Because he had gone to his house to pick him up, you and your colleagues went there, you didn't allow that to happen. Has reason prevailed, or do you know what the situation is?
Well, I'm not too sure about reason prevailing or not, but I think the position of the minority has not changed, which is that we should have a bipartisan committee to investigate this matter.
But do you know if there are still attempts to arrest him?
I don't know.
You do not know this?
I don't know.
You are in regular touch with him?
Quite.
He's okay, he's at home?
He's fine.
He's fine?
It comes with the terrain. So, I think where we are, our overarching preoccupation is to...
Who will be the best person to lead NPP in 2028 as flag bearer?
I think it's early days yet. When a defeat at an election is almost like a car crash. When you have a car crash, you don't get up automatically and start looking for another steer. You don't do that.
I like this analogy. What you need is not a steer.
No, you have to take it easy.
Okay.
Because even when you have a car crash, you want to move, they will arrest you or bundle you.
You have to be stabilized.
You have to be stabilized. So what has happened to the NPP is quite extraordinary. I think it's important that we are honest enough to admit that what happened in the last election was something that is extraordinary. We've never had that kind of defeat before. And so we need to take it easy and go through the investigations as it's been done. And thereafter, we will be in a position to be able to determine who leads the party. This is the time the party needs all of us the most. It needs our loyalty, needs our commitment, needs everything that we can bring on the table. But in all of this, what I can say is that an early Congress will help us.
That's something to explore. Interesting thoughts. That's Samuel Abu Jinapor, who's the MP for Damongo, also the immediate past Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, sharing his views on a number of issues. Thanks for watching. Thank you for being on the program. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.